Guys, welcome to the Track Record. I'm Paul here in Hoover, Alabama with Daniel Nixon. Daniel was class of 2016 at Spain Park High School, went on to run at Mississippi State. Then he ran at Iowa State. He's a three-time Alabama high school champ. He's got a bronze SEC indoors, a silver Big 12 outdoors, a bronze Big 12 outdoors. He was a three-time NCAA regional qualifier, and he's got a team title in the DMR at Iowa State and a team individual or team indoor championship also with Iowa State from 2020. Daniel, thanks for meeting me today and making this happen.
For sure.
But let's start. Take it all the way back. Phillips High School, maybe even before then, Phillips Middle School, sorry, and kind of what got you into running, how that all started for you.
Phillips Middle School, that's where I started running. Actually, when I don't remember how old I was. I may have been in like the third or fourth grade. Me and a couple of friends from my, at that time, elementary school, we ran on this little Army team in our neighborhood at the time. And I remember we had one like little cross country race. I didn't do good, but it was just to have fun, just some, couple of guys hanging out. But we were competitive. We did what we did. That was my first taste of running at a young age. After that, it didn't come back until middle school. And at that time, I was doing basketball, football, and track year round. So I just liked being busy. But also, I like the team, like the camaraderie, and also being competitive with other people. So in middle school, Coach Lockett, she was my track coach at the time. And at that time, I just thought I was going to be like 100 or 200 guys. That was fun.
Yeah.
Maybe 400, did some long jump. But one day I remember she made me run an 800 because I think I had stayed after practice one day and we were just playing basketball. So it was a punishment. And that was my first time ever running an 800. I don't think I enjoyed it. I don't even remember the race put together at all, but that was the first time I ran an 800. And then from there, I went to Spain Park High School, and still at that time I thought I was just 200, 400 guy, with some long jump here and there. And there I did football, basketball, and track year round, up until my junior year. That's kind of the beginning of the origin of that.
Yeah. Quick note, he was a 55 second 400 guy in middle school. So he started off a lot faster than a lot of us would love to have been. But let's talk like consistency. Like there was an article on Mile Split written by Travis Miller, I think. And he talked about, it was the year of Drew Hunter, I think, who broke 4 in high school. He mentioned that you had broken 2 6 times, maybe your senior year. Like, what do you accredit to like that consistency? Because that was best in the nation that year. Was you're the only person in the nation that had done it 6 times in a row. I'm pretty sure it was 6. But like, what do you attribute to that success and how you were able to stay consistent with that?
So what a lot of people don't know is at the beginning of my senior season, people usually have the full fall to build up.
Mm-hmm.
And I started out fall in crutches. I started out fall in crutches, and I think it wasn't until about 8 weeks, maybe about 6 weeks before the indoor season when I was allowed to start running. I had a little bump on my leg. A doctor thought it was a stress fracture. Another doctor told me it was a cancerous growth on my leg. And I had 2 options. One was to have surgery. Another one was to have an operation done. And that operation, he told me there might not be a chance that I'll be able to run the same ever. So this is coming off of my first state title, outdoor of junior year, summer, enjoyed it, going to senior season. That's when, recruiting picks up. And so to go into this season on crutches, being told that, hey, you have a cancerous growth, you may not be able to run the same again, you're going to have a surgery that'll have you out for a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Was devastated, but I was like, okay, like, I don't believe this. I can't believe this is happening. Prayed super hard. My family and I are super big on faith. So we trusted God rather than, really believing what man was telling us. And throughout that whole process, I was on crutches for maybe about a month and a half, and went to the doctor who was supposed to tell me exactly what procedure I should have done. And he did some scans, and we walked out. I remember I walked out of that appointment without crutches, and I went to the New Balance store off of 280, and I picked up a pair of New Balance for some new running shoes just to get some nice equilibrium going to. And I remember I started running that afternoon.
Wow.
So at that point, and even while I was on crutches, I was still doing whatever I could to stay active, biking, some weights here or there. But I made up in my mind, I was like, I can only control what I can control, and nobody's gonna stop me. I gotta go capture this indoor title. Big year, big season ahead, and so my first race back. In my head, I thought I was gonna be out of shape because I mean, only 6 to 8 weeks. Everybody else is running cross country,
right.
And I never did cross country. So I remember that first race at the Crossplex. I think I ran like 156.
Off of how? What was the timeline again from the boot out of the boot
to the first race might have been a little under. It might have been 6 weeks actually.
Okay, dang, 156 in 6 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. So throughout that process, still was doing rehabbing, biking, but I was ready for the moment. Like I wanted to come out dominant, and so that just kind of stemmed from me making up in my mind like, hey, I'm gonna do what it takes. I told my coach Zelwak that I told him my goals, shared him with my goals, and so we had a plan going into the season. And so up and downs, but at the same time, like you said, had to be consistent. With race planning and just going out there and just executing a good sound race.
Yeah. So then you finish out the season and you repeat. You win the indoor title, you repeat as outdoor title. Then like you move on to I think at the time, I don't think this is a thing anymore. Flow Golden South, right? Flow Golden South qualifies you for Brooks PR, correct? Yeah. Brooks PR in Seattle. So you run 151 there and you win that. Take us through that race and kind of that whole experience. And then even going further to Brooks PR.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the outdoor season, I told my coach, I was like, hey, I want to go to Brooks PR at the end of the season.
Okay. Was that the thing then?
That was the thing. Yeah. You had Brooks PR and New Balance.
Okay.
I went to New Balance indoor, did pretty good there. But outdoor, I was like, hey, like I want to go to Brooks PR. Like it was cool. And so for Brooks PR, you had to be invited. And in the state, I think majority of my races my senior year, like it was mainly me against the clock.
Yep.
And so I didn't really get a chance to, go to any other different races or anything like that. But a few races towards the end of the season, like I would try to chase a time. But at that time, I think I'd opened up my outdoor season with a 152 maybe.
Yep.
At that time, that was
pre-Alex Leaf.
Yeah, that was rolling at the time.
It still is rolling.
Yeah. So I told my coach, and he told me about Flow Golden South. He's like, hey, you can go here, and you can. That's basically it gives you like a kind of like in college where you go to East Regionals and you advance, and that's your ticket to nationals. So that's kind of how it was. And my parents, my little brother, we all drove down to Florida. At that time, I made up my mind. I was like, I'm not driving to Florida just to lose,
right,
or just to go down there and run. So went down there, executed my race. I think my plan was to kick at like 250 or 300. So at that point, when I hit 300, I just jetted and ended up running 151 there. Surprised myself. I wasn't expecting the time. I just knew I had to win the race.
Right.
So I trusted the training at that time, trusted myself, and just kicked to the end, and was able to secure that ticket to Brooks PR.
And then, okay, let's talk about Brooks PR. You go there, you run 155 for 7th.
Yeah.
Probably not exactly what you're looking for, but talk through that.
So we got to Brooks, and at that time, it was a great group of guys that was at Brooks that year. And we knew the race was going to be hot. A couple of guys, we were talking, it was like, hey, we're going 148, 149. And so I think we were planning to go through maybe like 51, 52.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we were on pace to do so. And two guys end up falling. Bryce Hoppel and Devin Dixon. Both of them, they failed coming around the bend. And I was moving up at that time, and I just caught they fell on the inside of the lane. So I had to kind of go around them. So that kind of threw me off a little bit. Not a little bit, it really threw me off a lot.
Yeah.
Because I was revving up and I felt it, and I knew we were all capable of, probably running in that 148 to 150 range, especially for that race. We were all still there. So they end up falling, and that kind of just threw a lot of people's kicks and whatever they had left in the tank off at that time.
Yeah.
So I got caught in the wind of that. Had to go, probably got pushed out to like lane 3 or 4. So that threw me off a lot. And so finished with a 155. Obviously didn't want a 155, but it was a fun atmosphere to be in, to go out there, have fun, race against people that you never really see at all. And just put together the best race that you can, and then after that prepare for whatever you have after that.
Yeah. Do you think the 800 is the hardest event in track? I would say it's arguably one of probably 2 or 3.
I would say top 2, maybe. I think obviously you could put the 4 hurdles in there just because of you're having to run just as fast, at least this day, having to run just as fast as a flat 400 and do it over a couple of hurdles. But for the 800, I mean, nowadays it's 2 laps of full sprinting, just about. So, and to be able to, it's like it's a distance where you can think just a little bit, but you don't have that much of wiggle room to make up. Like you can stumble and hopefully get back in there,
but a stumble could also throw off the whole race.
That can throw off the whole race, and so in that blink of a second, you could be out of it. So, I think it's the hardest race that I've had to run.
For sure.
400 is it's just 1 lap all out. 200 is half a lap.
Right.
A mile, it was never fun for me. I did it in high school for team points. But you get it's too much time for me, and I'm thinking it's like, okay, like how many more laps do I have?
Right. You're ready to kick, probably.
Yeah, I'm ready to kick. I'm ready to get out of it, and then I find out I got another lap to go. So
Okay, well, let's backtrack a little bit, but when did the college recruiting process start for you?
College recruiting process started for me that summer going into my senior year. I remember, I think it was at that time there was a window when college coaches could start talking to you. And I remember I got letters in the mail that summer, and that's when things pretty much started for me.
Okay, so who were you talking to? You ultimately land on Mississippi State, and why Mississippi State? So who were you talking to, and then why Mississippi State?
At that time, I was talking to, of course, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, TCU, North Carolina A&T, Kentucky, Navy had reached out, Georgia. It was a bunch of other schools. Those are the only few I can remember.
Sure.
Tennessee.
Go Vols.
Quite a few other schools. I just can't remember them.
No, that's good.
And actually, Mississippi State did not come into the picture until late spring.
Wow. Okay.
I think it might have been it was probably a few weeks before signing day.
Yeah.
Because I remember Coach Dudley he came to Spain Park High School, and we sat down in the library. We had talked. He had told me about the training. And at that time, Brandon McBride, he had just won SECs, and so he had a lot going at that time. And so I was like, okay, you come and join, and he'll be there. So it was a very attractive place to go. And at that time, I knew I wanted to run in the SEC in my mind. So that's how that kind of sprouted for Mississippi State.
We mentioned Dudley, and Dudley, since I started this, I've heard Dudley's name 4 times. Like, I didn't even know his name before then, and then I've heard it 4 times now. So talk about him and the relationship and what drew you to Mississippi State, like through him, kind of.
So Dudley was a very straightforward person. What drew me to Mississippi State, at that time, one of the biggest things was proximity.
Yep.
It was close enough where I could go home when I needed to, not so close enough where my parents could just pop up any quick second unannounced, but it was still close to home where I could come visit family, see my granny when I wanted to. But also they had a pretty good business school. And at that time, there were a few other guys. It was going to be a solid training group to go through. And Brandon McBride was still there. Yeah. So that was a plus. But Dudley, he was a very straightforward guy. It was a way totally different training that I had ever experienced. But like anything, like, I was up for the challenge. Like, I wanted to do whatever it took for me to get to the next level. And I was like, okay, like, the proof is in the pudding. You got a guy that ran, I think he was at that time 144. So hey, you can't argue with that. So I was like, okay, that would be something I would like to be a part of. So that's pretty much how that went.
Can you break down the differences kind of in Zowak was your coach, the main coach? Yeah. So Coach Zowak versus Dudley's training and the difference there?
Oh, so two very totally different. I think with Coach Zowak, we did a lot of different intervals. We kind of fought a lot on long runs. I think at that time, the longest run I had done was probably about 30 minutes.
Okay.
So I love Veterans Park. I love the trails, but it was just so hard for me to go past 25 minutes.
It sucks there.
20, 25 minutes out there. So a lot of those guys, they'll go out, do maybe a couple long runs, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. I would be trucking just to get to 30.
Right.
And a few times I just kind of like go half and then have to go back to the track. But in college, it's like you can't really escape kind of that training.
Right.
And so that's when certain different. I remember one of the hardest workouts I ever did was we had 30 by 200 and 20 by 400. And at that time, it was
the same workout.
No, not the same workout. Just two different ones.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Okay.
So we do 30 by 200, 20 by 400, and those are just my most memorable workouts there, just because like they sucked truly.
What were the splits? Do you know?
200s had to be under. 200s were under 32 with about 60 seconds of rest.
That's balling.
400s, I want to say we got, I can't remember the rest on those. But the target for those was definitely under 70.
Okay.
Under 70.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of my former teammates, we were dying. But the good part about that is we go out and do those in the morning. So you don't really get a lot of that big humidity, a lot of that heat. But we did a lot of that was the first time I had some long runs in there, anything past 6 miles.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did a lot of intervals, but I think the difference from Dudley and Zellwag, the biggest thing was the volume, and the amount of work that we were doing. I think with Coach Zellwag, it wasn't a lot of wiggle room for me to change some of my workouts, but I definitely like tell him like, hey, Coach, like I like this, or he'd still push me to do the workouts.
Yeah.
And with Coach Dudley, it was like you're gonna do this workout or you're gonna go home. So I think I had about maybe 1 or 2 workouts that I know one workout for sure I ended up going home because I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't finish it, and I was like my legs can only push my body so far.
Right.
And some of those workouts were designed to kind of push you to your limits. And that, so yeah, that's kind of the biggest difference between those two.
So Dudley leaves your junior year, I think.
He left my junior year,
and then that opens up the decision to leave. So walk through from Dudley leaving to your decision to go to Iowa State.
So at the
I know
end
there's
of
a lot there. But
yeah. So he left, and at the time we had an interim coach. He's the head coach there now, but through that whole process, I knew Olympic trials was coming up. That was my goal. End up running 140. I think I was 147 that year. Things were trending in the right direction, and I knew trials. That was my goal.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, I want some stability going into my senior year. I don't know what's going to happen here in Mississippi State. And it wasn't too much to do in Starkville.
No.
So, all around, I just wanted a new environment and some stability going into it. And I was actually going into, so we had SECs, was prepared to do something crazy there. I think prelims there, I ended up going out. I think I went out, it might have been like 49 or 50 points. I just wanted to see where I was.
Sure.
Because I knew finals was going to be high.
Right.
Went out there. Finals didn't go in my favor, but definitely pushed my body outside of my comfort zone to prepare for, what was coming up next with regionals and also NCAAs. And I got back from SECs and I told my coach, like, hey, I want to transfer. And this was right before the portal really got big. I think this might have been the beginning of the portal.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know too much about it, but I was like, hey, like, I want to transfer. I just need, I need a new environment. I want some stability going into it. There was some back and forth, but I think internally, like, I had my mind made up about, like, I didn't want to be in Starkville any longer. And I was actually blocked from transferring.
Okay.
I had to go through a series of events with a panel from, I think it was a panel from representatives from Mississippi State University. I think there was like a professor there, one of the athletic directors, and two other people. And I basically had to argue my case of like, I want to transfer.
Yeah.
Obviously, the opposite of today where kids can just, hey, I'm out of there and go in there.
Yeah.
So had to go through that process. And throughout that, I was also, this year, my main goal was to make it to NCAA Outdoors. And to get to NCAA Outdoors, you have to go to prelims. I qualified. I think I may have been like number 2 or 3 going into regionals that year. And then I found out that I was blocked from going, I was scratched from regionals. So the hopes of me going to NCAAs were out at that point. So at that juncture, I'd already decided like, hey, like, okay, I gotta find my next home.
Yeah.
And then after the panel with a few people at Mississippi State, I was granted access to leave. Don't know the official terminology for it, but they granted me the option to leave, and I did. And that's when Iowa State came into the picture. I had a bunch of schools reaching out,
Sure.
But I remember I had a conversation with Coach Sudbury, and he was just super personable, and it just felt like the right environment I needed to be in going into that year. And we actually got a summer to train, and my trainer, Coach Mark Everett, he was a 3-time Olympian, and he trains here in Birmingham. We worked together that summer, and anytime I was back home, we always get together and train. So that summer, after I had transferred out, we were training because there was an outdoor championship, USA's that summer. And so we were still training. And my 147 got me into USA's, but still training and still figure out, where I want to go. And so once I had decided on Iowa State, I found that I would be able to represent Iowa State at at USA's, and USA's just so happened to be at Drake,
Nice.
which was
Yep.
just right up the
Local.
road.
Yep.
So I was still training with Coach Everett until I moved to Iowa, I think in late June. USA's was end of July, I believe. So transferred up there, was working. Coach Subberry was watching some of my workouts, but he still let Coach Mark kind of give me my workouts because that was the system that I was in.
Yeah.
So when school started, was under that system fully. USA's didn't pan out exactly to what I wanted place wise, but had a strong. I think I missed out of qualifying to the next round by one spot. But throughout all of that, and to still train and have to move 13 hours away from home, I remember I enrolled in. I think I was enrolled in a class as well during that summer. So throughout all that, it was still a fun experience for me to even be able to go to USA. So that was how the transition from Mississippi State to Iowa State panned out.
Okay, keep talking. I'm gonna check the phone.
Cool.
But what was it like? What was it like going to USA's for the first time? Like, starstruck at all?
No, not starstruck at all. I've always felt like the underdog in my position.
Yeah.
I've never been, oh, this is so and so is there. Like, I already knew so and so was going to be there. You get the heat sheets a few days before. So not starstruck. I was ready. I showed up, was ready to race. So I mean, you can't avoid it. So you have to take it head on. Because I also knew in my heart, I was like, hey, like I'm bet on myself. Like any other race, bet on myself. So that being the first one, obviously it was fun because it was right up the street from me. So I got a lot of love from the people there. Very good experience. And I actually, Mississippi State was Adidas.
Yep.
And Iowa State was Nike. I was really happy about, getting some Nike there. But I was also, trying out new gear. And this is before, super shoes came out. This is when you still had the OG Victories.
Yeah.
And so I had 3 different pair of shoes that I was trying out. And it turned out I ended up running that race in some 100 and 200 meter spikes.
Shoot, okay.
I think because they looked similar to the 400 spikes they had.
Yeah. Was this an accident or on purpose?
I think I didn't even know at the time because I asked our equipment guy. I was like, "Hey, do you have any sprint shoes?" I'm thinking they had a 400, like a straight 400 spike. That I really liked after I kind of got to know which one it was. I knew what the victories were, but I think I wanted more aggressive because I knew the race was going to be hot.
Right.
And so I picked those. At that time, I was like, okay, these might just be super aggressive. But after that race, I realized I was like, these are the 200 spikes. So
that's crazy.
It was very aggressive. But either way, had them on, ran, had fun. I think I may have ran like it might have been 148 or something. Either way, it was still fun.
Sure.
That was just something I laughed at after. I was like, golly, I really had on some sprinter spikes.
Of course.
Cool experience.
Yeah. So at Iowa State, you guys make NCAA indoors, the DMR, right? And then COVID happens, 2020. Yeah. So talk through that, how that impacted your season and then how that impacted afterwards.
So that was the first time I'd individually qualified in an open event for NCAA. So got to qualify for the 800 and the DMR. I was excited because I was planning. I made up my mind. I was like, we got a shot, and really, I had 2 shots at pretty much national titles.
Yeah.
You qualify for nationals. I mean, you just got to race at that point. Yeah. So it could go to anybody. So I was like, you know what? Like we had a really solid team, and I believe we could have won that DMR. I think it was myself, Rashawn, Festus, and when I went to Iowa State, I was the 3rd fastest guy on paper. Like I didn't come in as the guy, but I was 3rd fastest PR wise. And then we had Edwin, so we were ready to go toe to toe, whatever. And I told my coach, I was like, hey, like at first I was like, I don't really want to run 1200. And I was like, we can really win, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to win.
Sure, yeah.
Because coming off of our first Big 12 title as a team, I was willing to do whatever. I just ran the DMR there as well. But I was like, I'm fit. I'm strong enough. I ran a fast 1,000 at the beginning of that season. So I was like, you know what? I'll take the 1,200 leg. Like,
Yeah.
I'll do it. I don't care about the rounds. Like, let's go out there. Let's put our best effort forward. So we get out there. I'm ready. I'm feeling very fit. I'm ready to go. And as we're on the plane getting there, we saw the news of we were hearing COVID, but we didn't know what it was. We saw the news. It was like, I think it was Harvard, and it may have been Princeton. They pulled out. They didn't even travel. They weren't like, this was live news. Like, we're rolling. Harvard and Princeton didn't travel. So we're like, that raised a lot of eyebrows. Then we land and we're like, okay, it's still them. So we get there. We're all in the convention center in New Mexico, and everybody's there. A lot of people are warming up. We're doing strides. I think we're doing like 200. We're feeling good. Like, we're rolling. And then you can kind of just feel the atmosphere, just like, it's like people are warming up. You're hearing some people chatter, but then there's like a lot of uncertainty in the air. Like, you just feel it. And then I think it might have been the ACC or Big Ten. One of those two conferences was the next one to pull out. So we're seeing athletes, like, our coaches stand off to the side, and they're like, okay, so and so another conference announces that they're shutting it down and whatever. So we're seeing those guys leave, and we're like, okay, like, they're out of there. We're still running. So the NCAA hasn't canceled anything at that point. So we're like, all right. So in maybe 3 or 4 less people we have to run against.
Exactly.
So that happens, and then a few minutes later, I think we're doing our last 200, and we cross the line, and then we just look. We hear some, like, a whole bunch of them, and everybody gets to notice, like, NCAA canceled. Da da da. So, super upsetting. I think I might have. I don't know if I shed a tear. But I was super upset because I worked really hard to get to this point. And in my head, I was like, okay, I came to Iowa to, one, get my degree, finish up my degree, make it to Olympic trials, also, be the best individual that I can be in the 800, and the season's canceled.
And you're a senior at the point.
I'm a senior at this point. So they're saying everything's done.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what in the world? Like, nobody had answers at that point.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I loved about Iowa State was how personable everybody was. I remember when I first got there, the AD, Mr. Pollard, Jimmy Pollard, he had tweeted me when I had signed.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeremy also had called him. He was on the phone with him, and he was telling us, like, he let us hear. He was like, hey guys, like, I know this is unfortunate. And Mr. Polly's a very well-connected guy, and I think he sat on a board at that time, so he knew some of the inside stuff that was going on. He's like, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that you guys are good, and that you guys, get whatever you need, and kind of get you guys back. Mm-hmm. And so, come to find out, time passes, and we end up getting extra season eligibility. Yep. Didn't get that indoor back because I don't know what happened with that. Seniors didn't get it back, but everybody under us got that one back.
Okay.
But yeah, it was very weird timing because I was just very upset because I trained very hard. Everything was trending in the right direction, and so yeah, I ended up coming back home for a few months. It's COVID, everything shut down, so I wanted to be with family. So yeah, that's how COVID happened.
Yeah. How did you react to COVID? Like, once you're here, like, still with that, everyone had uncertainty, right? But how do you, like, did you continue to train? Did you take time off?
So I spent a lot of time on the turf fields. I spent a lot of time doing some just runs through the neighborhood trails. Yeah. And believe it or not, a lot of the trails were just kind of like, not necessarily packed, but they were more crowded than normal because everybody, that was the time when everybody was getting out, get outside, get some fresh air. A lot of people were staying in. But I remained, I stayed fit. I tried to do as much as I can. We just didn't know timetable wise, like, when we'll be able to race again. When can we do this again? So, I stayed in shape. I may not have been like, super race shape, but, give me a couple of weeks, we can sharpen that out. But fitness wise, I just remained fit. Doing a lot of different easy runs, a bunch of fartleks. But I utilized the grass and the turf a lot because I just felt like that kind of made my legs work a little harder. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I did throughout that time.
Okay. So let's move towards the trials, and in a sense, this gave you more time to prepare for the trials.
Yeah.
You go 3 rounds. 146 in the first round, 4th place. 146 in the second round, 5th place. In the finals, 145 lifetime PR, 7th place. You lose to some guys, some studs: Clayton Murphy, Isaiah Jewett, Bryce Hoppel. Like, what was that whole experience like? You finally made it there, and you run your lifetime best on the biggest stage in America, at least.
Yeah. So again, another great experience. At that time, my goal was I was finishing up. So that year, I was working on my master's.
Yeah.
I remember I had a paper due, like literally right as I was either traveling or while I was there or in the midst of it. So it was
no extra love from your teachers or anything?
They knew where I was. They gave me some, but me, I'm a big planner. Like, it wasn't like,
Okay.
give me some time. Like, that's just something I've always known. Like, being a student athlete, like student just naturally came first. Like academics, just something that is naturally, like I know I have to do that. So didn't really need any extra grace. It was just something that I was going to get done anyways. But my goal there was like, originally my coach had us booked for I think 2 days there.
Okay.
I mean, because just technically on paper, like, our PRs, if you just go by PRs, like, numbers wise, you're not gonna make out.
Yeah.
But I told my coach when we got there, I was like, hey coach, you're gonna have to extend that stay. And so we all joked about it.
Yeah.
But I was dead serious. I was like, I'm not coming out to Eugene just to play around. Like,
right.
My goal was to come out there, obviously win if I can. But I believed in myself and my training at that time, because I was doing some very good workouts that got me in shape. Because I was training in the right direction, but I also didn't make it to NCAA's. Didn't make it out of West Regionals, and I was ready to just hang it up.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep my goals in mind. I called my coach back home. I was like, hey coach, like I'm done. Like I just ran 149.
Yeah.
In regionals, and I know I'm way faster than that, but I can't do it anymore. It's like take some time, take a day or two, call me back and let me know. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it another shot. So I think I told my coach the next day after the regionals, after I didn't make it out, I did a workout on the track, and it's like, okay, like I'm still in shape. Yeah. Like it was just one of those races, you don't everything doesn't work out in your favor.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing 2 other races, flew out to Tennessee, and then I flew out to Oregon, actually. I think it might have been the Twilight race.
Okay.
Ended up running 147s at both. I think 2 of the same. It might have been during a millisecond difference, but it was just consistency at that point. So I knew I was like, it's there. So I was doing a few other workouts that were showing me like I had 146, 145, 144 in my legs.
Yep.
I just had to put it together on the track.
Right.
And so, leading up those workouts that I had, I knew I was in shape. So that's when I think I might have been like the 2nd or 3rd person on the list at the bottom.
Okay.
So barely got in those races, qualified for it. But when I got there, I was like, coach, yeah, like you're gonna have to extend and stay. Because I didn't come out here for nothing. So we're going to have to I'm going to make it shake. So I'm going to do what I got to do. So I knew each race, I approached it the same. I was like, hey, 250 out. I think I did 250. 300 out, you start rolling, and 250 is whatever you got left. So that was my approach every race. So you go back and look at those races, I start moving at that point, at that 300 point of those races. And so, to get to see 146, when I crossed that first one, and it was like, I think it might have been 146.1. I was like, 146.1, like, dang, I couldn't get over. Yeah, it was the best race ever at that point. I was like, dang, that's close to 145. And before this, I just ran like 147 high, and I was like, golly. And to think I was 149 ready to give it up.
Yep.
So, it all kept on, working out. I was like, okay, boom, that opened some door, and I was like, okay, like I'm in the mix. So all I gotta do is keep doing this. And obviously you had my goal at that time was to run professionally as well. But I kept my focus on each round.
Yeah.
So I didn't get caught up in, you know, all the buzz and all the stuff. And obviously people were talking about the favorites at that time. And I did get a lot of love and support from everyone back here. So that was good, but I still kind of focused on each race, you know, the meals that I was eating before it. I think I ate the same meal before each one.
Yeah.
Grilled chicken sandwich and some fries.
Okay.
Had that before.
That's a sprinter meal right there.
It is, but I mean, it was just one of those things that I was like, what if it's not broke?
Yeah,
don't fix it. So I did that, and you know, consistency, and going into each race and approaching it the same. I don't care who I'm lining up against.
Yep.
I'm gonna make my move when I make my move, and try to put myself in the best position to do so. So each round, I kept that same mentality, and it produced the results. And I remember going into finals, I was still pretty much the underdog at that point.
Yeah.
But I knew, you know, I didn't care who I was lining up against. I was like, hey, I'm gonna make the same move I can, and I'm gonna try to run as fast as I can to that line. And then I remember I looked up, I saw 145, and I was like, golly, like I dropped to my knees.
Yeah.
I thank God, because I wasn't supposed to be there numbers wise. Like you can't argue with numbers. Like there are a lot of athletes out there that are fast, and you know, sometimes, you know, having to put together the perfect race.
Yep.
And execute it's harder than most people think. But luckily and prayerfully, I was able to piece everything together. It came together just at the right time. And, you know, I didn't get the place that I wanted, but at the end of the day, I did get a lifetime best. And, you know, super fun experience. Just go out there and race, and just to know that I left what I had on that track, and I executed my race plan the best that I could.
Yeah. Where does that confidence come from? The confidence, like, I'm gonna run my race plan, I'm gonna do my thing, I don't care. Is that you've always had that? You worked on it, or what?
So I would say it was obviously a work over time. I mean, even my senior year in high school, like most of those races, it was me against the clock.
Yeah.
Like everybody knew I was gonna take the race out. I remember there was even one race in Homewood. Everybody knew I was taking the race out. So I told the guy, I was like, I'm about to take this race out hot. Like, y'all can follow me if you want to.
Right.
But internally, I was going to make that race super slow. And I want to run a fast 200 to 600 and whatever I had left, just 200.
Yeah.
So taking it out slow, and the guys feel it like nobody, the goal was to let somebody just get to me, get in front of it and take it to 200. But they all sat, and they realized how slow it was. And somebody went around me, ride it like maybe 180, and 200, when we hit 200, I just blasted.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. But, you know, most of that time it was me against the clock, so I knew, you know, I just had to go. And then obviously college came, and then you're going against guys, and you're going to be in a new system, so it's it's a whole different ball game. But I think that confidence from within, it was a lot of faith work. You know, my individual walk with God, like I had to strengthen it over time, and really tell myself like I belong here. Yeah. And that self-confidence that built over time, and that really got me to where I needed to be long term. So I think going into that last year, that's when I got super close to God. Was journaling a lot, was adjusting some of the things I was feeding myself spirit-wise. And I was really trusting him in my journey walk, because I had a lot of alone time through COVID. So it was really just, you know, because at that time we were getting tested like once a week. And if you got positive, you had to be out for maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. So I had a lot of alone time. So that really got me closer to him. And I really just leaned on him and trusted him and trusted myself and trusted my training, and to know that everything would work out in the end. And so obviously some self-doubt creeped up in there. But that confidence kind of helped me along the way.
Yeah. Let's got a couple more questions and we'll wrap this up. But what would you tell the kid who just started track and they got really big goals?
To that kid that just started track and has super big goals, don't lose sight of those goals. Give yourself some reasonable goals. Really examine yourself for where you are, but also give yourself some shooting goals, like, you know, some reach to the stars. Like, even if it sounds crazy, you have to believe in it yourself. So, you know, establish those goals, and then also, be open with your coach. Like, tell your coach what you want to do. A lot of coaches will tell you what they want to do, but not often do you hear what the athletes want to do themselves.
Mhm.
Obviously, you want to run fast,
Yeah.
but tell them what you want to do and try to get a plan together to reach that goal. So that would be my piece of advice for a young athlete.
I had a coach who said, I'll meet you halfway.
Yeah.
Whatever you give me, I'll give you the same on the other side.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, let's meet in the middle. Let's make something of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Wish I had done that when I was younger. But where are you right now? Like, where's life taking you right now?
So right now, the past year and a half, I spent it running for Adidas and Atlanta Track Club. In the past few months, I decided to take a break from running just because it was a lot going on. I had an injury. I just felt I needed some time away from running.
Yeah.
Running wise, you do not get a lot of time off.
No.
So I think the past 8 or so years, if you can add up all the time that I got away from just not running, it would probably be less than 2 months.
Sure, definitely.
Of just no running, because technically you may get about 2 weeks, if that, off completely a year, to just do anything. And most of those time, I would try to do something active, is riding a bike, going swimming. But I've really got the chance the past few months to really decompress, enjoy the time with my family, travel, do some of those things that kind of, really that I want to do. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Where are some places you've traveled to in this decompression?
In this decompression season, I got the chance to go. I traveled out the country that was my first time, because I traveled to race in Canada, but I got to go to Cancun recently.
Cool.
And that was super fun. Enjoyed it. And that was the first time I got to just go on a trip casually.
Yeah.
Because I'd have family trips that they want to go to, but I just couldn't go because, hey, I gotta go race.
Yeah. Or other trips you're training on.
Yeah, even training on the trips. It's like, all my friends, they get to go have the fun spring breaks. They get to go on the cruise and stuff. And I'm like, hey, like, I got to race. So, and a lot of my coaches, it just so happened that, the breaks that we'd have, they kind of find that inner piece of like, okay, you got to report back at this point, or I want to make sure that you're doing this. So it wasn't too much wiggle room for me to really go. And me as an athlete, like, I wanted to make sure I stayed grounded and stayed disciplined, so I wouldn't, could I have gone on trips? Maybe.
Sure.
But innerly, like, I knew there's somebody out here that's working, so I can't really take too many days off. So, to really have this time to decompress, and the biggest part about it, I've been able to spend a bunch of time with my family. I got a little brother. He's a senior at Hoover High School. So I've been able to spend a lot of time with him and help him through his navigation journey of, he's not being recruited to go to college. So to be there with him and really see him take his discipline to the next level, it's been a blessing in disguise.
Could you take him on the football field if you had to?
No, he is he's 6 foot 270.
Oh shoot. Okay.
Yeah, so we've definitely we would be two different positions on the field.
Okay.
He's stronger than I am.
Yeah.
We've had a couple track sessions, a couple little races along. So we've trained together and done some things. So it's been fun.
Yeah.
But on the football field, he's definitely got it himself.
All right, last question. Who next on the track record? One from Spain Park and then one non-Spain Park, but within the Alabama high school system. Alumni, current people you may know.
One person that I think that should be on here next.
Yep.
Alabama has a lot of great people, and I appreciate the work you're doing to tell those stories. I think. Let me think. There's a guy, maybe I would say past. There's a guy named Donnie Lee.
Yep.
He used to run the 800, and he was a few years before me. I think that's he was also one of those top guys. But he has a great story of what he's doing now and from his matriculation up. and a person that's in, let's see, I don't know. I'm kind of getting old, so I don't really know a lot of the
That's all
younger
right.
guys.
That's all right. That's all right.
But I mean, you know, just any opportunity, anyone that really has, you know, looking, you know, where they are, their matriculation, people that have diverse backgrounds, giving them the opportunity. I think that that would be cool. Even mixing up with people that do different events. You know, if you've got somebody um, that does running, or you know, that may throw.
Yeah.
Actually, a name just came to mind. Curtis Thompson. He trains
Okay.
here. He was a former teammate of mine.
Is he javelin?
He throws javelin.
Okay. Okay. I've heard of him. Yeah.
I think he's two-time Olympian.
Okay.
Um, he's definitely won USA's before. But he trains here and he's coached here.
Okay.
He'd be a good person to talk to just because he didn't go to school in Alabama,
Right.
but he coaches here.
Okay.
So I think that'll be another good person.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm excited for throws people
Yeah.
and field people because they definitely don't get any
Yeah,
love.
they
but
don't get enough love that they, you know, deserve, and you know they put in just as much work as
Absolutely.
the runners do.
Yeah.
So you know, give them their chance to tell them their stories, and you know it'll be a different. You know, everybody. You know, you never know. You may hear something that you know strikes you like, hey, this is good, and so.
That's right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, field people, we're coming for you, guys. This is, oh my God, Daniel Nixon. Holy crap! I just blanked on your name. Daniel Nixon, Spain Park High School. Daniel, thanks for the time. It's been really fun.
For sure, I appreciate it.
Cool. It's been real. Thanks, guys.